We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis in Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesuvos Daf 37b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara asked, according to Rabbi Meir, who says a person can get malchus and have to pay, local mishalim, so why do we need two psukim to say that you only get one punishment and not two? And so the Gemara answered, V'chada b'miso malchus. One, we're talking about misa and mammon. You can't get both misa and mammon. And the other one is that you can't get both misa and malchus. That's why you need two psukim. And again, the Gemara says, Utzrichen, we need both psukim. Di'ash me'inon misa u'mammon, because if it only taught us that you're not get both misa and mammon, mishum dechada begufe v'chada b'mamone lo avdinan. That's because one punishment is in the person's body, the misa, and the other punishment's in the person's money when you have to force him to pay. So in those cases, you're not allowed to do two punishments. Aval b'misa malchus, but if you have a situation where you're giving a person both misa and malchus, the idi v'idi begufe, where both of them are punishments in the person's body, so ema misa arichta v'navid ve, I might think that's just considered one long death, and we can do such a punishment. There's no problem giving a person both misa and malchus. I might have thought that, so that's why I need a pasuk by misa and malchus. V'iyashmin and misa and malchus, and let's say I only taught us this halacha, if we only learned the halacha by misa and malchus, the tarte begufe lo avdin, and maybe I would say the opposite. Maybe you can't do two punishments that apply to the person's body. Avol misa and mammon, but when it comes to the punishment of misa and mammon, techada begufe v'chada b'mamone, where one punishment's in the person's body, the misa, and the other one's in the person's mammon when you're making the person pay money. So eimon navid besa, then I might think that you could do two punishments. So tzricha, so that's why I need both psukim again to teach us that both by misa and malchus and by misa and mammon you can't have two punishments. And the Gemara continues, "V'lo sichu kofer lenefesh rotzeach lamali." So according to that, what do we need the pasuk which says you're not allowed to take payment for a murderer? So it seems to be saying the same thing, that the person who murders, he gets the death penalty and he doesn't pay. And so to that, the Gemara answers, no, that pasuk means diyamar achmana. There, the pasuk is saying lo sishkol memona minei v'siftere miktala. Don't take money from him in order to exempt him from being killed. That's a different halacha. Halacha means to say that you can't take money from somebody who's supposed to get the death penalty in order to pater him from the death penalty. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. The pasuk says, "Lo sichu kofer lonos al ir miklato lamali." Let's say you have somebody who kills b'shogeg. It says you can't take a monetary payment. The person has to go to the ir miklat. He has to go to the city of refuge, and you can't take a monetary payment. Why do we need that pasuk? And the Gemara answers, "Damar Achman." Again, a similar thing. The pasuk is saying, "Lo sishkol memona minei v'tiftere min galus." Don't take money from him and then exempt him from galus. He can't give money instead of going to galus. And the Gemara says, "Utrei kroi." Well, what do we need two psukim for? Why do you need a pasuk to say that money will not exempt someone from the death penalty? And also a pasuk to say that money will not exempt somebody from having to go to galus? And to that, the Gemara answers, chad b'shogeg v'chad b'mezid, because one pasuk is talking about someone who murders by mistake, and the other is talking about somebody who murders on purpose. And the Gemara says, utzrichi, and we need both psukim, di'iash me'in and mezid, because if we only learn this halacha by somebody who kills b'mezid, mishum dechamri sureh, again, that's very strict, and therefore in that situation, of course, you cannot pay to get out of it. Aval shogeg de lo chamri suri, but if you kill b'shogeg, which is not as strict, so imalo, I would say maybe not. Maybe you could pay to get out of golus. V'yashmin and shogeg, and if I only taught you the case of shogeg, mishum deleko ibn neshama, because in that case you don't have a situation of a loss of life. You can't pay money to get out of going to golus. Aval mezid ibn neshama, but when it comes to mezid, where we're going to be giving the death penalty, it involves a loss of life. So imalo, I might say it's not the case. Maybe you could pay to get out of the death penalty, because we don't really want to administer the death penalty. And so therefore the Gemara says stricha, that's why we need both psukim to say that in both situations you can't pay money to get out of the punishment. And the Gemara continues, V'lo aretz lo yechupar l'dam asher shupach ba kiyim bedam shofcho lamali. This is a pasuk by Egla Arufa. Situation by Egla Arufa is you find that somebody died outside of a town, so the halach is that they have to bring a calf and they have to kill it with a cleaver at the nape of the neck. So in such a situation, the pasuk says that we cannot allow this spilled innocent blood to not be atoned for. So what do we need that pasuk for? That seems to be the same idea, that we have to give the death penalty to somebody who is a murderer. What do we need that pasuk for? And the Gemara says to that, mi boile l'chidatan, that is needed for the following brisa. The brisa says, minayin shem nisarpo egla. How do we know that, let's say, after we've already killed this egla, we've already killed the calf, v'achar kach nimtza horeg, and then after that we find the murderer? Minayin shein potrino. So how do we know that we don't pater the murderer in that case? Maybe you'll say, once we already killed the calf, you don't kill the murderer. That's what this pasuk is is saying. Shenemar, the pasuk says, "V'la'aretz lo yichupar l'dam asher shupach bo v'gomer." The land cannot forgive this innocent blood that was spilled. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. V'atot tevar hadam hanaki mikirbecho lamali. Pasuk says again, you have to take care of the innocent blood that was spilled. You have to punish it. You have to punish the murderer. What do we need that pasuk for? It seems to be the same thing. And to that the Gemara says, no, mi boile, we need that pasuk as well. L'chidetanya for the following brisa. The brisa says, minayin lemumasim b'sayev shumenat savar. How do you know that when you kill someone with the sword, meaning to say they have the punishment of hereg, or what we call sayef, how do you know that that punishment that's administered by the court, it involves cutting the person by his neck? Talmud lomer, because the pasuk says, v'atot tevar hadam hanoki mikirbecha. It says again, you have to pay for the innocent blood that was spilled. Hukshu kol shofchei damim le'egla arufa. Now that pasuk again is by egla arufa, and we're comparing all murderers to the situation of egla arufa. Ma lahalon minat savar, just like by egla arufa you kill the calf by its neck. Af shofchei damim minat savar, so too by all murderers, this is the source, they get killed by the neck. That's the idea of getting killed by sayif. And the Gemara says, but if you're going to compare it to egla arufas over there, they use a cleaver, and it's at the nape of the neck. Afkan bekofit sumimoloref. Are you going to say the same thing over here? Should you do it with a cleaver at the nape of the neck? And to that the Gemara says, no. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, Amar Kra. Rav Nachman said that Rabba bar Avua said, it says in the pasuk, you have to love your friend like yourself. And we understand from there, boru lo misa yafa. You have to choose an appropriate form of death. It would not be an appropriate, a respectable kind of a death penalty to use a cleaver and to do it in the same fashion as the egla arufa. And the Gemara continues, Kol chayrim asher yochara min ha'adam lo yipada lamali. Well, what about the pasuk of Kol chayrim, which also seems to be saying the same idea of lo yipada? You can't redeem a person can't pay money to get out of the death penalty. As Rashi over here says, chayrim min ha'adam, adam shemechuyev chayrim. It means a person who is chayev chayrim. In this case, it's a reference to the death penalty. It seems to be teaching us the exact same thing. You can't pay money to get out of the death penalty. And to that, the Gemara says, mi boile l'chidetanya. We need it for the following brisa. The brisa says, how do you know, let's say somebody is being taken out by Bezin to be killed, and another person says, whatever his value is, whatever his erech is, that's upon me. I want to donate that to Hekdesh. I want to donate that to the Beis HaMikdash. How do you know that that's like saying nothing, because that person who's being taken out to be killed is considered to have no value? Shenamar, that's what we learn from this pasuk. The pasuk says, you can't redeem it, meaning to say there's no value to this individual in terms of erchin, because this person is being killed, because he's taken out to be given misas bezdin. And the Gemara continues, Yachal af kodem shenigmar din. Okay, now I might say that's even true even before the Gemar din, even before the court rules that the person is getting the death penalty. Maybe even at that point we're going to say that there is no erech. Talmud lomar, the pasuk says min ha'adam. In this pasuk of Kol chayrim, it says from the person, v'lo kol ha'adam, and not all of the person, meaning to say that only in certain situations, only in a situation where there was a Gemar din, where there was a verdict, then we say that there is no erech, then we say lo amar klum. But if it's a situation where there was not yet a verdict, so then we say there is a value. And the Gemara continues, but what about according to Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya, the Amar Nerach? He actually says, no, there is an erech, even for a person where there was a verdict and he's being taken out to be killed. Even there, if a person says his erech, his value is upon me, there is considered a value there, and he has to donate it, mipnei shadam of Kesuvin. Because Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya says, when it comes to erech, it doesn't go by the person's value on the slave market, it actually goes by the person's age and gender. There are set amounts, set values that the Torah gives. And therefore, in this case, even though the person is not worth anything in the sense that he's being taken out to be killed, but the Torah gives a specific value based on age and gender, and therefore Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya says, yes, you could say that erech alai, you could say that person's value, erko alai, that person's value is upon me. So therefore, we're back to our question. Hi kol chayrim ayavidle. What does he do with this pasuk again of kol chayrim? And to that, the Gemara says, mi boy leilechidetanya. He needs it for the following brisa. The brisa says, Rabbi Yishmael ben Oshel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Omer, Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, says, Lefi shematzinu lemumasim bidei shamayim, because we find that people who are killed at the hand of heaven, people who are chayiv misa bidei shamayim, shenosden mamon mischaperlen. They actually could pay money, and it acts as a kapara. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, im kofer yushas olav. It talks about this idea of kofer, this idea of payment. So yachol af bidei adam kain. So I might think the same is true when it comes to misa bidei adam. Maybe you could pay money, and that's what this pasuk teaches us. Talmud lomar cheirem min ha'adam lo yipadeh. Again, if it's a situation of bidei adam, if it's a situation of misa at the hands of the bezdin, so lo yipadeh, so you can't pay money in order to be redeemed. And the Gemara continues, v'yein lela misas chamuras. Now I only know that's true when we're talking about the strict misas bezdin, shelo nitana shigegasan lechapara, meaning situations where if he would have done it b'shogeg, there is no kapara. But misas kalos, what about the lighter situations of misas bezin? Shenitna shigagasan lechapara, meaning cases where if the person would have done it b'shogeg, there is a kapara. Minayin, how do you know over there in those situations you can't pay money to get out of it? Talmud lomar kol chayrim. So that's what the pasuk says, kol chayrim, it's even true by the misas kalos. Now Rashi over here says, ela misas chamuros shelo nitna shigagasan lechapara. There are strict misos, which if you do it b'shogeg, there's no kapara. Kaven dekra lo parish kol misos. Since the pasuk doesn't mention all misas bezin, so mistayach ishadis hachumra de'ein memona matzilo amisas chamuros. Maybe this halacha, this stringency, only applies that you can't pay money by the misas chamuros. Now, what are the misas chamuros? Umayininu, what are examples of the misas chamuros? Kagon ha'usa chabura ba'aviv. For example, let's say a person wounds his father. Ogonev nefesh miyisrael. Let's say a person is kidnapping. He steals somebody who is Jewish. She'ein kapara ksuva b'shigagasa. There is no atonement written if a person does that by mistake. She'ein kares there is no kares if you do it on purpose, and therefore there is no chiyav chatas if you do it b'shogeg. So those are considered misas chamuras. But misas kalos, but when it comes to the misas kalos, hainu kol misas hamuras ben kares al zedona. That refers to any misa where it mentions that there is kares if you do it on purpose. Below hasra, let's say you don't get warned. Yesh kapara b'shogegasa b'chatas. In all of those cases, there is an atonement if a person does it by mistake because the person brings a carbon chatas. Kagon avodas kochavim v'shabes v'arayos. For example, avodah zarah, Shabbos, arayos, inami rotzeach sheyesh kapara l'shegagaso begalus. Another example would be somebody who kills by mistake, so there's a kapara because the person can go to galus. So again, that's the situation of misas kalos, and the point is, it applies not only to misas chamuras, but applies also to misas kalos. And so the Gemara continues, v'lo memela milosichu kofer shamat mina. But the Gemara asks, 1 second, what do we need this pasuk of kol chayrim? We already quoted a pasuk that says the same thing. The pasuk says you can't take money for a situation where blood was spilled. Lo sishkol mamona minei v'siftere. That's exactly what the pasuk means. Don't take money from the person and pater him. As Rashi over here says, v'lo memelo shamat lamilo sichu kofer. By lo sichu kofer, what do we say over there? Haga'abe rotzeach kasiva. That's talking about a murderer. V'nituna kapara l'shigagaso. And there is a situation of an atonement if he does it by mistake. V'yashminan krashalo yatzel asatzva mamon. That's what the pasuk is saying. You can't pay money to get out of it. V'lo malisu kol chayrim. So what do we need the pasuk anymore of kol chayrim? What is that adding that we don't see from the pasuk of lo sichu kofer? And so that's what the Gemara says. Again, lo sishkol mamona minei v'siftrei kol chayrim lamali. What do we need kol chayrim for? And to that the Gemara answers, Amar Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama says, Itzrich, we need the pasuk because sal gadai dechamina, because I might have thought, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph.